The air is thin, cold. The sterile scent of antiseptic hangs in the dimly lit hospital corridor. It is June 25th, 2009. The world is still sleeping, unaware. A phone rings in the pre-dawn quiet of a Los Angeles newsroom. A frantic, hushed voice. He's gone. They're saying it's cardiac arrest. Then silence. And then a sound the world had never heard before. The sound of 1 billion hearts breaking at once. The king of pop was dead. But in the echoing void left by that silence, another sound began to grow. A low, persistent whisper. A rumor that snaked its way through the grief and the tributes. It spoke of shadows, of powerful, unseen hands. It asked a question that was both outrageous and, to some, terrifyingly plausible. Was it just a tragic accident, or is it something more? Did Michael Jackson finally outlive his usefulness to the most powerful and secretive audience of all? Eerie, ambient music swells and then fades into a single, sustained synth note. To understand the question, you must first understand the man, not the icon, the boy. The year is 1966. Gary, Indiana. The smell of industry, of steel mills and hard work, fills the air. In a small, cramped house, the sound of relentless discipline. A father's voice, sharp and demanding. The squeak of sneakers on linoleum. The repetitive thump of a bass note from a cheap amplifier. This is where it began. Not in a glittering studio, but in a pressure cooker. 5 brothers, forged into a weapon of sound by the will of their father, Joseph Jackson. They were the Jackson 5, and their secret weapon was the smallest of them all. A boy with a voice that seemed too big, too old, too soulful to possibly come from his tiny frame. Motown Records, 1969. The air is thick with cigarette smoke and ambition. Berry Gordy, the king of a new musical empire, signs them. He sees the potential. He sees the gold. But most of all, he sees Michael. The machine swings into action. The matching outfits. The choreographed smiles. The hit factory churns out number ones. I want you back. ABC, I'll be there. Michael is the star, but he is not in control. He is a product, a highly valuable, highly polished asset. The system owns him. He performs. He generates revenue. He obeys. It is a blueprint, a lesson in how a unique talent can be harnessed, packaged, and sold by a powerful, centralized system. A system with its own rules, its own rituals, its own inner circle. A system that to an outside eye might look an awful lot like sound of a record scratch, cutting off a Jackson 5 song abruptly. A different kind of smoke. Incense. The smell of old money and leather-bound books. A library in a sprawling New York City apartment. Michael Jackson, now a young man, sits across from a woman who radiates an aura of formidable influence. She's Catherine Helms, wife of billionaire mogul John D., Rockefeller's right-hand man. She is also a high priestess of a very particular New York social scene. She places a heavy, ornate book on the table between them. Its cover is embossed with a single, striking symbol, the all-seeing eye within a pyramid. This is not a music industry meeting. This is an initiation. Michael Jackson is inducted into the Helmsley Rockefeller Circle. He is given a tour of the United Nations by none other than then Secretary General Kurt Waldheim. He is photographed with Nancy Reagan at the White House. He is moving in a new world. A world of unimaginable power and connections. A world that exists in the shadows behind the public stage. The whispers begin. Is he being groomed? Is he being recruited? The evidence, they say, is in the art. Because art in the right hands is never just art. It is a message, a signal, a tool. The world is introduced to Thriller. It becomes the best-selling album of all time. But look closer. The album cover. Michael's eyes hold a strange, knowing glint. He is dressed in a pure white suit, a stark contrast to the black background. Purity and shadow. The iconic Thriller video. The Dance of the Undead, led by a figure with glowing yellow eyes. An initiation ritual into a secret society, masked as entertainment, or just a brilliantly spooky music video. The whispers grow louder. Then comes Billie Jean, his first performance of the moonwalk on the Motown 25th anniversary special. A move that defies physics. A move that makes him appear to glide, untouchable, above the stage. An illusion that captivates millions. He is no longer just a singer. He is a magician, an enigma. And enigmas are useful to those who trade in mystery. His appearance begins to change. Dramatically, the skin lightening, the nose refining, the face reshaping. The official story is vitiligo and lupus, a tragic medical condition. But the conspiracy theorists see a different narrative, a deliberate erasure of his African-American features, a symbolic shedding of his old identity to be reborn as something new, something controlled, a puppet being physically remade by his masters. He builds Neverland, a sprawling multi-million-dollar fortress of childhood wonder. But it is also a place of immense isolation, a gilded cage far from prying eyes. Who visited him there? What deals were made behind its candy-striped gates? The rumors of his financial troubles begin to swirl. He is the biggest star on the planet, yet he is drowning in debt. Who is really pulling the financial strings? The 1990s bring allegations, scandals that shake his empire to its core. His reputation, once golden, is tarnished. The media-feeding frenzy is relentless. Is this just the price of fame? Or is it something more sinister? A coordinated takedown of an asset who was becoming too unpredictable, too difficult to manage? The stage is set. The pieces are moving. The boy from Gary is now a global emperor of pop, yet he seems more vulnerable than ever, surrounded by advisors, managers, and doctors. But who do they truly serve? The man? Or the power behind the throne? The whispers are no longer just whispers. They are a theory, a dark, sprawling narrative of influence and control. And it is about to reach its devastating final act. The 1990s. The air around Michael Jackson changes. It no longer smells of popcorn and carnival rides from Neverland. It smells of tabloid ink and legal paperwork. The childlike wonder curdles into a pervasive sense of dread. 2 lawsuits, 2 families, allegations that strike at the very heart of the carefully constructed Neverland myth. The world turns on him. The media, once his amplifier, becomes his executioner. The narrative is no longer about his music, it's about his morality. But step back from the frenzy. Look at the mechanics. The first investigation in 1993 ends not with a verdict, but with a settlement. a multi-million-dollar payment to make it all go away. The question hangs in the air, thick and unanswered. Who has that kind of money? And why pay if you're innocent? Conspiracy theorists see a different playbook. They see a classic strategy of a powerful entity protecting its asset. A public trial would have destroyed the Michael Jackson brand forever, a brand that generated unimaginable revenue for a vast network of interests, record labels, promoters, merchandisers. A quiet, expensive settlement, while morally questionable, kept the machine oiled. It was a business decision, cold, calculating, and utterly ruthless. Then the second trial, 2005, Santa Maria, California. The scent of desert dust and heated asphalt mixes with the tension outside the courthouse. Michael, gaunt and frail, arrives each day in a different waistcoat, a king whose crown has become a crushing weight. He is acquitted on all counts, but the victory is Pyrrhic. The spectacle has broken him. The global perception is sealed. He is a pariah. His finances, once a river of gold, are now a desert. He is reportedly $500 million in debt. Neverland is shuttered, its magic replaced by a ghostly silence. He is adrift, a ghost ship of his former self. This is where the whispers about control become shouts. An asset in decline is a liability, and liabilities must be managed. Enter the comeback. The proposed salvation. This is it. A grueling 50-show residency at London's O2 Arena. The promise is a triumphant return to glory. The financial promise is to erase the massive debt. The announcement sends the world into a fever pitch. Millions of tickets sell in minutes. But look at Michael. The footage from rehearsals in the weeks before his death tells a story the press releases do not. He is thin, ghostly pale, sometimes vibrant and in command, the old magic flickering in his eyes. Other times, he is shivering, confused, reliant on a teleprompter for lyrics he wrote decades ago. He speaks of needing to save the children. His focus is cosmic, not on choreography. He is surrounded by a new circle, a circle of enablers, some would say handlers. Most prominently, his personal physician, Dr. Conrad Murray, a man with his own financial troubles, hired for a staggering $150,000 a month for one job, and one job only, to ensure Michael Jackson slept. The king of pop is now a patient, a dependent. His most basic human function, sleep, is outsourced to a man with a syringe and a bottle of the surgical anesthetic propofol. The theory posits this. The comeback tour was never truly about Michael's comeback. It was about extracting the last remaining value from a dying brand. The promoters, AEG Live, had insured the tour for hundreds of millions. They had a financial imperative for the show to go on, regardless of the condition of the star. They were pushing a man who was visibly breaking. Was Dr. Murray a lone wolf, a negligent doctor playing with fire? Or was he the final, necessary instrument of a system that had bled Michael Jackson dry? The man who could keep the asset functioning just long enough to get him on stage, using a dangerous chemical crutch to do so. The narrative of control reaches its peak. The Illuminati, if they exist, are not mustache-twirling villains in robes. They are cold corporate entities. They are bottom lines and contractual obligations. They are the relentless pressure to perform, to generate, to produce, even when the human vessel is shattered. In this light, Michael Jackson was not murdered by a secret handshake or a mystical ritual. He was killed by the inexorable, dehumanizing pressure of the machine he had been part of since he was a child. A machine that needed his talent but had no use for his humanity. A machine that provided him with a doctor who would administer a fatal dose because the show, the revenue, the empire had to go on. The final days are a haze of rehearsals, whispered concerns, and a constant, low hum of medical equipment in his rented mansion on Carrollwood Drive. The stage is set not for a comeback, but for a conclusion. The final act is approaching. The lights are about to go down. June 24th, 2009. The rehearsal at the Staples Center. The last time anyone would see him perform. The cavernous arena is empty, save for the crew. The air is cool, smelling of polished flooring and electrical wiring. A single spotlight cuts through the darkness, finding him. He is wearing a black jacket, sequins catching the light. He launches into the "They don't care about us," his voice strong, filled with a raw, defiant energy that belies his fragile frame. He moves with a familiar, electric grace. For a moment, it's 1984 again. The magic is still there. But then the song ends. The applause from the scattered crew echoes in a vast emptiness. He stands there, panting slightly. He looks small, alone in the spotlight. He raises a hand. "Thank you. I love you. I really do. You have to feel it." His words hang in the air. A blessing? A farewell? He leaves the stage. The lights go up. The illusion is over. Later that night, at 100 North Carrollwood Drive, the Holmby Hills mansion is silent, a fortress of modern luxury that feels utterly temporary. The only light comes from under the door of the master bedroom. Inside, the smell is clinical, rubbing alcohol, the faint, sweet scent of propofol. Dr. Conrad Murray is there, monitoring his VIP patient. He's been trying everything to get Michael to sleep. A cocktail of sedatives has already been administered. Valium, Ativan, Versed. Nothing is working. Michael is restless, anxious, talking about the immense pressure of the upcoming shows. He needs to be sharp. He needs to rest. He begs for his milk, the secret, dangerous anesthetic he believes is the only thing that can grant him the oblivion he craves. Murray, the well-paid employee, complies. He hooks up in 4 drip of propofol, a substance meant for hospital operating rooms, not home bedrooms. He administers a 25 milligram dose. For a moment, there is peace. Michael's breathing evens out. He slips into unconsciousness. Murray, according to his later testimony, leaves the room. He makes phone calls. He attends to other matters. For 2 hours, the most famous man in the world is left alone, unattended, with a powerful anesthetic dripping into his veins. The silence in the room is broken only by the hum of a refrigerator from the kitchen below. The light from a digital clock casts a faint glow. Then, the monitoring equipment, if any was truly being used, would have begun to scream. But there is no scream, only a gradual, terrible quiet. The breathing stops. The heart, overworked, stressed, and chemically suppressed, simply quits. It is just before noon on June 25th. Murray returns. He sees Michael pale and still. He feels for a pulse. Nothing. Panic, cold and absolute, sets in. He performs CPR on the bed, a futile, almost farcical effort. He calls his patient's personal assistant, not 911. The priorities are clear: contain, control, manage. When paramedics finally arrive, the scene is one of chaos and confusion. They find Michael Jackson lifeless, eyes open and fixed. They note the extraordinary array of medical equipment and bottles littering the room. It doesn't look like a home. It looks like a poorly run ICU. The ride to the Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center is a desperate, sirens blaring formality. Doctors work on him for over an hour, but it is a performance. The body on the gurney is already cold. The news leaks. Then it erupts. It circles the globe at the speed of light, a digital tsunami of shock and grief. The world goes into mourning. But in the shadow of the outpouring, the theories find fertile ground. The official story: a tragic accident, a negligent doctor. The alternative narrative: a predictable outcome. The final, logical conclusion of a life lived under immense, unsustainable pressure. The system had pushed its central asset to the absolute brink, provided him with the means to barely function, and then looked away when that means became the end. Dr. Conrad Murray was not a mastermind. He was a pawn, a vulnerable man with financial problems, offered a king's ransom to do a job no ethical doctor would ever consider. He was the perfect disposable instrument, the loose end that could be easily tied and cut. He was convicted of involuntary manslaughter. He served 2 years, a slap on the wrist for the death of a global icon. To some, the light sentence only confirms it. He was a fall guy. The crime was far bigger than one man. The crime was the system itself. The machine, however, did not stop. It never does. It simply adapted. The "This Is It" rehearsals were hastily edited into a concert film, a haunting eulogy that grossed hundreds of millions of dollars. The album sold out. The merchandise flew off the shelves. In death, Michael Jackson became more profitable than ever. The ultimate final act of control, the monetization of a tragedy. The question was no longer just who controlled his career. It was who was now cashing the check. The fallout was immediate, and it was eternal. The initial, overwhelming wave of global grief was a real, human thing. The candles, the flowers piling up outside the gates of Neverland and his childhood home in Gary. The tear-streaked faces of fans from Tokyo to Berlin to Rio. The world had lost a piece of its soundtrack. But beneath the genuine mourning, the machinery was already whirring back to life. The smell of grief was quickly joined by the scent of fresh ink on legal documents and the cold calculation of spreadsheets. The Michael Jackson brand, which had seemed so tarnished in his final years, was now being polished to a blinding, posthumous shine. The narrative was being rewritten. The troubled, reclusive figure was once again the untouchable king of pop. The controversies were gently pushed into the background, mentioned only as the trials he endured. The "This Is It" rehearsal footage, originally intended for a private vault, was swiftly edited into a global blockbuster film. It was a surreal experience for audiences, watching a ghost rehearse for a concert he would never give. Every smile, every burst of genius in those clips was now viewed through a lens of profound sadness. The film grossed over $260 million. The albums, a vast catalog now freed from the complications of a living, breathing artist, shot back to the top of the charts. His estate, once drowning in red ink, began to generate revenue at a staggering, unprecedented rate. Who was in control now? A probate court, executors, lawyers, a new set of handlers, managing not a man, but a legacy, an empire. The control had become absolute because the asset was now perfect. It could not talk back. It could not make unexpected decisions. It could only generate. And the whispers? They did not fade with his death. They mutated. They grew more intricate, more darkly fantastical. Some theorists pointed to the symbolism in his public funeral. The solid bronze, Promethean casket, polished to a mirror shine. It was carried by pallbearers wearing a single sequin glove. A final, global broadcast of his iconography. To some, it felt less like a funeral and more like a ritualistic entombment of a royal figure, a pharaoh laid to rest with his treasures. The service itself was held at the Staples Center, the very place of his last rehearsal. The machine using the venue of its final extraction to host the memorial. Others dug deeper into the music videos, the art. They saw clues everywhere. In the black or white video, the morphing faces of people from all cultures was seen as a message of the New World Order's goal of a homogenized, borderless society. The Earth Song video, with its powerful imagery of environmental destruction and resurrection, was interpreted as an allegory for the Illuminati's belief in their power to destroy and rebuild the world as they see fit. The allegations that had plagued him, some within the conspiracy community now proposed a terrifying inverse. That he was targeted with these allegations because he was trying to break free. That his constant references to helping children, his messaging of love and unity, were a threat to a control system built on division and fear. That the scandals were a weaponized tool to discredit and dismantle a powerful voice that had grown beyond its programming. The doctor, Conrad Murray, became the perfect villain for every theory. To the mainstream, he was a negligent, greedy man who played with fire. To the conspiracy-minded, he was a deliberate patsy, a programmed asset, chosen for his debts and his malleability, to administer the final, quietus dose and take the fall. His light sentence was seen not as a failure of justice, but as a reward for his silence, for playing his part. He was the loose end that had been neatly trimmed. The debate rages on, a low hum in the digital underbelly of the internet. On one side, respected biographers, music historians, and psychologists. They present a clear, tragic arc. A profoundly gifted but deeply broken man, haunted by a stolen childhood, surrounded by sycophants, and ultimately killed by a doctor who was in far over his head. A perfect storm of personal tragedy and medical malpractice. On the other side, the theorists, the researchers, the connectors of dots. They see a pattern too consistent to ignore. A life bookended by control, first by the music industry, then by a shadowy network of elite interests. They see a narrative of a man who was used, reshaped, and ultimately discarded when he became more liability than asset. They don't see a storm. They see an assassination by 1,000 cuts, administered by a system that views human beings as instruments of profit and influence. So, did the Illuminati control Michael Jackson's career? The answer depends on what you believe. Do you believe in coincidence? In a series of unfortunate events? Or do you believe in patterns? In the cold, relentless logic of power? One story is a tragedy. The other is a conspiracy. Perhaps they are both true. Perhaps the most powerful conspiracy is not a secret society meeting in a locked room, but the open, ruthless conspiracy of commerce and fame, a machine that consumes genius and spits out product, a system that will love you to death and then sell your memory. The music remains, the questions linger, and the king of pop sleeps on, forever silent, while the world he left behind continues to play his songs and argue about the man behind the mirror.